Hello and welcome to this lesson on Azure Active Directory for user management as well as the group management. Uh, Before I begin, I wanted to tell you that this is going to be a very basic lesson on Active Directory for user or group management. Probably the most very basic in this course. If you have already experienced with Azure Active Directory, or maybe you have already taken some of the courses on Azure AD specific topics, or you're already working in Azure Active Directory, maybe this lecture is not for you. If not, I welcome and let's start jumping into the Azure Active Directory. Before we work with Azure Active Directory, so this Azure Active Directory is very similar to think for now as very similar to your identity management that you have on premises for Active Directory, but this is a cloud native, so it can understand the cloud specific protocols that are capable of Azure Active Directory can do for you. So Azure Active Directory or Azure AD is the Microsoft cloud-based identity and access management service which helps your employees to sign in and access external resources. For example, let's take example as the Microsoft Office 365 or maybe Azure Portal for this example, or maybe thousands of the softwares which are hosted within the Azure Portal. As a service application, for example, let's take Salesforce or maybe Dropbox or a box kind of different applications also can be accessed, which are internal resources like your applications which are in your corporate network or maybe on internet. These things can be accessed when you grant or when you create your user account for your employees, and they can access when you grant the access for them. And if you're the developer, for example, and you're trying to develop some kind of application, you have enough flexibility to code it the single sign-on mechanism for your application so that you are allowing the end users to automatically log in with their existing credentials. In short, we can say that it's going to minimize your entire administrative overhead. Back in the olden days, we used to have each application ending up with their own identity directory access, but now with the cloud-enabled native application, it's a completely single sign-on. It means that the users have to remember only one Active Directory or one directory login credentials or the domain credentials. That would actually helps them to use wherever they wanted to use it for their applications. In this lesson, we are going to discuss users. Who are they? Why are they? What are they? And why do we care about those users? A user account is an account that's required to access your Azure resources. We also sometimes called as if you see here, if I just go to the accounts, I can say here sometimes it's a work account or maybe school account sometimes. So in other words, if a user account was created in Microsoft Azure Active Directory sometimes, or maybe in your on-premises Active Directory, and that got synced with the Azure AD Connect, and then in that situation we also called as the user account. Sometimes we also invite guest users. So when I say guest users, just to collaborate from business to business, that's a B2B collaboration. Let's say you have a client and he's working on your infrastructure. You, instead of maintain their identity management like the first name, last name, all of that, you can simply invite them so that they can use their own identity management. Let's say they use their own email ID, but they can log into our Active Directory and they can access the granted resources. So that's called the business to business collaboration, and we would be learning that in the upcoming lectures or maybe in this lecture. And when it comes back to the managing or creating user accounts, you have the three possible options. The first one would be the Azure Portal. It means a graphical user interface like we just have try to access from the Azure portal, that's a portal.azure.com. So that's where you can access. That means these are the three different interfaces you can use to manage your Azure for creating user accounts also. So let's say you can create a user account from Azure Portal or from PowerShell or Azure CLI. To create user account in Azure Active Directory, click on Azure Active Directory. Make sure that you selected your required directory name. So in my case, this is the on Microsoft.com tenant ID, which I wanted to create within the account. If you see here, this is not yet configured with any of the domain names. I will be doing this with another domain name so that the users will log in with my registered domain name. But for now, I would be using the existing default tenant ID. That means username @ this domain name would be used. That is the bpavan26hotmail.onmicrosoft.com will be used. So let's jump into the creation of the user account. Go to all users, click on new user and try to fill all these details. So I'm going to give here, I will be giving here James Taylor's ID. So like I wanted to create James.Taylor at bpavan26hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. And if you see here, the tick mark was accepted. That means the user account can be created. And the first name and last name and other details I can fill up here, like the first name and other things. So in this case, I can give here James and Taylor. So that's how I wanted to create. And I can create here auto-generated password, or let me choose my own password. So in my case, I wanted to automatically let it create a random password, and I would like to copy this and give it to the user. And if you see here, I'm not assigning any other groups for this user. So we do have different groups where we can create, which is in the next lecture we would be creating different groups. If you have multiple groups you can assign, so the groups are the easy way to grouping the users. And also you can assign different roles. So since this user is a normal user, I would be happy to go with only normal user account. However, if you wanted to create maybe global admin, this user account to be part of James Taylor should be part of global admin, you can choose that. Similarly, there are multiple AD groups are available. You can choose the required permissions or the group memberships or the roles based on the requirement. So in my case, I'm leaving as a default with the user account. And also I don't want to block my users sign in option. So let it user to be allowed. And user's location, I would be selecting the country based. So in my case, the user belongs to United States, so I would be selecting United States. And you can give the more information like job title and department. Let's say this user is a system administrator example. I can give has here, and also the department belongs to IT. So it's going to create a user account when I click on create. So now in a minute you can see here, without a refresh you are able to see here James Taylor, and if you refresh also it will be available in a sorting option. And if you want to edit, you can go back to the profile by selecting that user and click on edit, and you can do the changes. For example, you can add the photograph of that specific user, or maybe the location and the street address or the phone numbers can be added as additional information. Once you have done, for example, I wanted to add here city name as Redmond and click on save. That would actually save the user profile. If you have assigned any of the applications, you would be able to see here any of the application assignments in this properties. And also if you assign any of the licenses, you can check out here. And the user, if he is using any of the devices, maybe he may sign in into iOS devices or Android or Windows 10 devices, then it would be listed here the number of devices that user is performing activities. And here, if you're the global admin, you should be able to see if the user is logged in any of this sign-in information. This will be very helpful when you're trying to troubleshoot. For example, if the user sign in getting failed or any of the errors, you can filter out and you can find out what is going on. And now, as a next step, we can create from the Azure PowerShell. So to create the Azure PowerShell, either you can open from your machine PowerShell and get it connected, but I would recommend you to work directly from the Cloud Shell. If you see here, Cloud Shell is a new feature within the Microsoft Azure portal. Right from here you can create and run all the PowerShell specific commands. So if I want to run for the PowerShell, I simply have to select here PowerShell, and my subscription is pay as you go model, so I can create a cloud storage. That means whatever the activities I'm performing will be stored in the background. By the way, this is just for the first time you would be able to getting these information, and it might take 1 or 2 minutes or so. Otherwise, it would directly get connected to that shell. Once it's connected, you can see here the complete PowerShell, and if you want to switch back to Bash, you can always switch to Bash also. That's a CLI mode if you want to do it. So it all depends what command line or what interface you wanted to use it. So let's begin with PowerShell first. So you see here it's quickly connecting post to the first time configuration. So I want to create a user account. So here is the documentation. If you're quite new, you can go always and reference here all the commands that are specific to Azure AD. So in my case, I wanted to create a user account. So here you can get it, just to create specific, and you would be able to get a lot of other things specific to the create. Otherwise, what you can do is create a new user account. So if you see here, I have a user account creation called new Azure AD user. So if I click on that, this is the information for the help specific. So here also gave the examples. The first step would be to creating and storing a normal password, which was typed here as the string as a password. So this password might needs to be adjusted with a more complex word, otherwise it might fail. So I'm just going to change here the word called password to something else, and I'll try to paste that. So if you see here, I'll just paste it, but I'm not going to hit enter, because if you use only the password, it might throw you an error. So I'll just give you here some other value. So I'm just using this complex password, so a long lengthy password, so that this would be accepted easily, and I'm just hitting enter so that it gonna actually save. And next thing would be to create the account with this name. So if you see here, the display name, whatever the user display name you wanted, you can give here, and your UPN name of that user, and the password is which was stored in this variable. So I'm just modifying that accordingly and copy pasting in the shell. So if you see here, there's a new Azure AD user with a display name called Williams. If you see here, I think I need to give here double quotes, which is missing display name and UPN name and the password, and hit enter. This is going to create a user account. If I just go here to my Azure portal, and if it's refresh, it should create David Williams user account. It has been created with this specific password. So if I want to log in, I can log in with this user account as a guest. So I'm just using a guest browser to log in to show you the user account is this. So I'll simply sign in with the user account, and this is the password which I used to log in, and it's gonna ask me to remember. No, I don't want to remember the password. So I'm able to log in to this Azure portal. That means the user access is granted, and I'm able to access if any of the resources are assigned to me. As a next step, we will be trying with Azure Client Tools or CLI. For the CLI, you have all the references with these all the commands. I would be pasting this URL along with this lecture. You can check out that. And as your AD specific, you have all the commands are available here. So you can use all these commands to achieve your Azure Active Directory specific commands. And if you want to start using the bash, what you can do is you can simply click on here Cloud Shell. That would actually gives you an option to either choose PowerShell or to bash. So if it is opening for you PowerShell, you can click on bash. That would actually open this CLI. So by using these Cloud Shell, by this time you would be understanding that this would be the easiest way to work directly from the browser. So to begin with that, to create Azure AD account with the help of CLI commands, you can check out here the commands that are available. Let's see, create an Azure Active Directory user account, which is mentioned here. You can use the CLI commands to create it. So if you see here, the display name is the display name that needs to be provided, and the password and also the user principal name, that's the UPN of the user. That's a username at whatever the on Microsoft.com or your domain name if you have verified your domain. So I need to modify here this command with the display name I have to give and the password and the UPN name. So I'm just entering here the values. If I can paste here, so I can explain here the command like AD user create and the display name with Daniel Craig and the password, which is a secure password, and the UPN name is daniel.craig@mydomainname.com, and hit enter. So now a long lengthy one would be now coming up as the output. You can see here this has been created successfully and there is no errors. And if I just go here and refresh, I'm able to see here daniel.craig at UPN name of my domain as a username. So this has created successfully. So far we try to create a user account within our Azure Active Directory. But what about if a user wanted to work within our company but just for limited to a scope of a project, like you are inviting other business person to work or access your resources. So that's called the business to business collaboration or B2B. In that situation, what we do is we would invite the users to log in. So it can be a guest user. That means the user account is not going to be managed by you. That means the identity management is not done by yourself. Or when I say yourself, not from Azure AD or not from your specific tenant. That means the user account might be there in Azure AD but not managed by you. Maybe other business person, or maybe the user account can be in google.com like a Gmail, or maybe in Hotmail ID, or it can be any other account, but it's not just the Azure AD account. If you see here all users, now the source is showing as the Azure Active Directory for all of them, but for the new guest users it would be completely different. Let's create by inviting any of the user account so that the user can log in. I want to invite here a guest user who can log in into my Azure AD. To do that, I'll just type here one of the user account which I own in Gmail. So first name, please access, and I can choose the location here, whatever the country he's coming from. Let's say if he's coming from United States, I can choose that, and he's a developer example, and invite. That's actually gonna send a user to this user account one email. So I just logged in here, and let's see if I get any email by refreshing my Gmail account. You see here I got an invitation email just now 0 minutes ago, and says that, hey, default directory by your organization by PaddyMaddy is sent an invite, get started. So if I just started with this, I just wanted to start in a private mode so that there will not be any conflict with my current session. So I'm able to log in, and I need to give here a new password. So this is not my Gmail password, this can be a new password. So I will be giving here a specific password so that user can log in. So I'm just creating entry code. So it's just trying to verify my email IDs really exist, and it sent an email to my ID. So if I just go back here to my inbox, under updates, I got an email with the verification code. So that's a 6354 is the verification code which I got it. So I simply copy this code and I would enter that code. So this is the code which I wanted to enter, 6354. So it's asking for me to verify characters to be entered, and finally I'm able to log in, and it's just requesting you to you're signing into this directory and make sure that you're accepting all these terms and conditions which were coming from my domain. Now if you see here, there's no applications after I log in. In any case, if I have granted any of the applications for this specific user, he should be able to log in and able to access those applications. So we're going to set the application access in the upcoming lectures. For now, we know that there are three different methods where you can create the user accounts. The first one is you can create from the Azure Portal. Also, you can create from Powershell, and also from the Bash. You can switch back here, either PowerShell or the Bash. And also there's another type of account called guest account. Sometimes we also call it B2B specific, for the business to business collaboration purpose. And if you see here, if I just refresh, the B2B user account should be visible here. And that's an account which is coming as a guest, as a source Microsoft account, and the type of the account is guest. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this. I'll catch you in the next lecture.